Do you remember this scene where Thelvedon becomes the Arbiter in Halo 2? The song in the background is called Mausoleum Suite, and if you play it in reverse, you can actually hear my favorite character in the lore, Mendicant Bias, speaking to the Arbiter. Here's a clip of the song played in reverse with subtitles. Mendicant Bias speaks very cryptically about what he's trying to convey to the Arbiter, but I'm going to go ahead and get into the lore a little bit more about Mendicant Bias and why he exists to begin with. Mendicant Bias was created in order to go ahead and learn more about the Flood and how to combat them. And in a 300-year conversation with the Primordial, which was a hybrid between a precursor and a Flood grave mind, he had contracted the Logic Plague. The Primordial basically convinced Mendicant Bias to turn against his creators, which is where that line of gods and men comes from. He fired one of the installations, which killed everything within a 10,000 light year radius, which is trillions of lives. And the Forerunners then realized that the Flood was basically going to take over the entire galaxy and decided to fire all of the Halo arrays. Offensive Bias was created in order to go ahead and combat him. And basically, he was dismantled and placed on the Ark and the Dreadnought that you see in the center of High Charity. Directly before the start of the Human Covenant War, there was a group of the Covenant who had discovered one of the pieces of Mendicant Bias on the Dreadnought ship. They activated him, and he was no longer infected with the Logic Plague, and told them basically the translation that they had fucked up was incorrect, and the reclamation was not a great journey as they had originally claimed. It was death and destruction for all living creatures, and that the only people that could go ahead and activate it were humans, because the Forerunners handed the mantle of responsibility over to the humans. This pissed off the hierarchs. So they decided, we're going to go ahead and cause genocide and kill the humans, but also keep at least one alive so that we can go on this great journey. Mendicant Bias heard this and tried to fire the Dreadnought ship and escape and go find the humans. One of the Legolo worms that creates the hunters, they were actually within the ship and had disconnected Mendicant Bias, so it stopped the Dreadnought from taking off. The launch of the Dreadnought ship destroyed quite a bit of High Charity, which was rebuilt over time, but it was a setback for the Covenant. Over the course of 3,000 years, Mendicant Bias was able to cure himself of the Logic Plague and come to the realization of his sins against his creators. So his ultimate goal that he was created for was to defeat the Flood, and the only people who would be able to do that were the humans. So he did everything in his power to influence anything within the Halo universe to make sure that the humans were able to go ahead and defeat the Flood. I have a personal theory that in Mausoleum Suite, the Arbiter was able to hear him and decipher what he was saying even though he had been raised to hate humans, but it was what ultimately convinced him to team up with humans. Fun fact, Mendicant Bias was still on the Dreadnought when High Charity was infected by the Flood. I like to think that Mendicant Bias was doing everything in his power to not contract the Logic Plague again and was actively fighting against them without anyone else's knowledge. Let me know if you want more facts. Bye!